your socks! Hey!
The Lost Art with Andrew Cox podcast, now streaming on all major podcast platforms. A Till Valhalla Project ambassador. Thanks for tuning in to the podcast that's given a voice to our veterans. The Lost Art with Andrew Cox. Hello, my friends, and welcome back to the Lost Art Podcast, that podcast giving a voice to our veterans. I'm your host, Andrew Cox, and today we're having a My Veteran Story. But before we get into that, are you enjoying the podcast? Then be sure to go to our website. That's thelostart.podbean.com. Check us out. See what we're all about. There is a merchandise tab. You can go in there, get you some cool gear. There is also a patron tab. You can click on that, help support us in getting our veteran voices out for all to hear. Big shout out to the Till Valhalla Project. They're out there doing amazing things. If you don't know anything about that amazing organization, please go check them out. It's tillvalhallaproject.com. If there's any way you can help them, please do so.
Ton Tavern, birthplace of the Corps. We as Marines hold this history close to our hearts. Wouldn't it be spectacular if the establishment was born again? The Ton Legacy Foundation, a nonprofit 501c3, is taking the task and is looking to the Marines to once again save the day. Help the Lost Art podcast in raising funds to help get the Ton built once again, only 100 yards from the original establishment in Philadelphia. We are looking for Marines to donate $25, representing the upcoming 250th birthday of the Corps. Spread the message and help establish the Ton, a place for Marine brethren to gather and remember our historic beginning. Go to the Lost Art GoFundMe page and donate today. The Ton Legacy Foundation, reestablishing our birthplace.
All right. Well, I have Jason, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joyner. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right. Jason Joyner, Marine veteran here. He's going to talk to us about his experience in the military, and I'm very excited to hear it. So how you been doing?
I've been okay. Been okay.
All right.
Very
nice.
The holidays always bring some challenges with it. So
that is a true statement. Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess let's start at the beginning. I know you kind of started that earlier, and I apologize, but I'm gonna ask you to repeat it again if you don't mind. But like, where did you grow up, and what drew you into military service?
Well, I grew up a little nowhere town called Fallon, Nevada. About 63 miles east of Reno. And, 90 people in my graduating class, a whopping 300 in our high school. At the time I graduated, it was already 100 years old. Our basketball court, our original basketball court was still in the middle of the high school where you had to push the bleachers apart to get to the basketball court.
Right. Yeah. Very nice.
But I lost some friends in Beirut in '83. Some of the guys that I went to high school with. And, being from a small town, a farming community, we didn't own any farms. We didn't own any land, grew up working it with everybody else. But that's kind of what drew me towards service. And then by the time I graduated, there really wasn't anything else for me to do. And my family on my mom's side were all Army, Vietnam vets. So obviously got a lot of bad intel there. A lot of,
Yeah,
you don't want to do this. You don't want to do this. And a lot of bad experiences from that side. But the Marine recruiter, sharp guy. I remember in my mind, he was like at least 6'5", big gunnery sergeant. I don't know if he was actually that big, but you know how the mind of a young man works.
That's right.
But brought him in to talk to my mom because I was still 17, and the first words out of her mouth is, "Oh, he'll be a good Marine. He's already a stubborn, arrogant SOB." I kept a pretty good grade point average when you could keep me in school. That was the problem.
Yeah.
If I wasn't working, I was out finding other things to do.
Yeah. Idle hands, right?
Yeah.
But
went in the Marine Corps in '84, and had some challenges. I was a whopping 103 pounds when I headed to boot camp.
Wow.
So, but it was the way we grew up. We up before the sun come up, and doing what we had to do on the farms, then go to school, and then go right back to work. That was what we did.
Yeah.
So you didn't get 3 squares a day. So I get the basic training, and to me that was a lot of food. It's like,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah,
how am I
yeah.
going to put all this down? But my mom had a friend. She worked out at there's a Naval Air Station out in Fallon,
Mm-hmm.
and she had done some work out there, and she met a retired Marine first sergeant. I'll never forget the guy, Bob Roach, and
Okay.
he bet me the week before I left for boot camp 2 of his first sergeant retirement checks to my first paycheck that I wouldn't make it out of boot camp.
No
So now,
kidding.
yeah, and smart guy, he got me.
Yeah.
He definitely got me, because not only did I come out of boot camp, but I came out as the honor man.
Very nice.
So I went back to him and told him to keep his paychecks, because he put me on the right path, and he did it for the right reasons.
Yeah.
Obviously that was peacetime Marine Corps. So the 80s were they were a little bit different. Mid to late 80s were a little bit different.
Yeah.
You were still dealing with some of those Vietnam vets,
Oh, yeah.
but
And that was a different world, dealing with Vietnam vets, as being a young Marine, seeing those guys and what they went through. I'm sure there was some craziness happening from time to time.
oh, absolutely. I had a sergeant, Sergeant Kratz, used to talk about going out back and smoking pot in the pit.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what? Yeah, wait a minute, hold on here. That's a no-no. But
Yeah,
I ain't
yeah.
a Vietnam vet, but I ended up
Wow.
actually going to engineer school as a heavy equipment mechanic.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And to me, it's like, well, that's right up my alley. I grew up working on farm equipment, fixing tractors.
Yeah.
That's what we did. So it was a good trip for me. I didn't realize that I had actually scored high enough on the ASVAB score to have my choice.
No kidding. Okay. So
'Cause it
now
was like,
you chose that, or somebody chose
I
it for
chose
you?
that because
Okay.
it was the offer, and I thought, well, diesel mechanics, because when I get out, I can come back home and open up my own diesel shop, and trying
Yeah.
to think ahead,
Mm-hmm.
not thinking about where life was going to take us.
Yeah.
But went to engineer school, was already a Lance Corporal. I had graduated basic as a Lance Corporal, got to engineer school,
Very nice.
and they dropped me in the class leader's position. Obviously, I was the senior guy there.
Mm-hmm.
And then towards the end of it, offered me what they called the Band of Brothers Award, which is for the top dog in the class.
Right.
And I turned it down. I said, the offer is we'll promote you to Lance Corporal. I'm already a Lance Corporal.
Yeah.
I don't need it. Give
Yeah,
it to the
yeah.
next guy. So
Very nice.
I felt pretty good about that. And I thought, okay, well, I'm off to my first duty station and get to go from Courthouse Bay 15 miles north and end up at Camp Lejeune, 2nd Combat Engineer Battalion.
Very nice. Yeah. 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 Yeah.
I'm sure you remember where those areas are.
Oh, I do. Yeah. I've been all around Lejeune. It's a good time.
Yeah. Literally, we were right across the street from the post office. So,
Oh, okay. Yeah. 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 So the barracks
yeah.
that were the old barracks and stuff, that was right across from the post office where you were.
Well, the shop was right across from the post office. Our barracks was over by 2nd Tanks.
Oh,
So,
okay.
not only was there a lot
Yeah.
of internal conflict between the basic engineer students and the Amtrackers that were all out at Courthouse Bay, there was a lot of fun in the tree lines at night after leaving the E Club.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I could see that. And there's plenty of tree line there, so
Well,
that's
there
for
used
sure.
to be, not so much anymore.
Yeah, they chop them all down, or what
Oh
are they
yeah,
doing?
the places have grown exponentially. Engineer
Yeah.
schoolhouses, instead of 3 companies, engineer equipment maintenance, engineer operations, and combat engineers, there's 3 companies of each of those. And then, of course, the Amtraks have grown and expanded between
Mhm.
Amtraks, amphibious assault
Yeah.
vehicles, the Raiders. All the Raiders are out there. The rigid Raider crafts
Mhm.
are out there.
Yeah,
So,
there's a lot out there now. Shoot, it's
yeah.
good. Dang.
But from that point, went to 2nd Combat Engineers. 6 months in, ended up as quality control.
Oh wow. Okay.
I'm a farm kid. I knew how to fix tractors. That's all they were to
Yeah.
me, was just big green tractors.
Yeah. Yeah.
So did good. They sent me off to maintenance management school, which, okay, now you got the admin stuff. Well, not only do I got to fix them, I got to learn how to write the damn paperwork. No job is
All the fun
finished till the
stuff.
paperwork is done.
Yeah, that's right.
So, but at some point, they offered me two options. Promotions were closed, but I was already a Lance Corporal, so that really didn't affect me much there.
Hmm.
But trying to watch everybody else get up there. But then
Yeah.
they said, well, you got two choices. You can either take scuba school, because we got one seat for scuba school, don't know where it came from, or you can take orders to Hawaii. I thought, I've been thinking about
Mm.
doing this whole recon thing, but Hawaii sure sounds good in the 80s.
Yeah.
So I ended up transferring out and going to Hawaii.
Very nice.
I didn't take the scuba school. And my induction into Hawaii is where I really started seeing what the Marine Corps was all about.
Okay.
Being at Camp Lejeune early on, you're young, you're driven. I had been Marine of the Quarter a couple of times, had gone through a couple of boards. And then I check into Hawaii, and it's the middle of the night when I check in. So, at that time we had to travel in uniform.
Yeah.
So I'm in my uniform, got slick with my rifle badges. And I see this sergeant major coming down the passageway in the half light. And he's only got a couple of rows. And I'm thinking, wow, all these other Vietnam vets. I mean, I had sergeants with, 4, 5, 6 rows of ribbons. What's up with this sergeant major?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Until he got close enough where I could identify that top ribbon. I had been checked into Brigade Service Support Group 1 by Sergeant Major Kellogg, the Congressional
Oh,
Medal of
wow.
Honor winner.
Yeah. Holy cow.
Yeah, and that was something to just, I mean, as a young me thinking I'm a hard charging Marine, to run across that Congressional Medal of Honor
Yeah.
right there in my face, live and in color.
That's
But,
wild.
that was one of my first true leadership mentors.
Okay.
Because I watched how he handled the entire Brigade Service Support Group. He just happened to be touring that day. The staff duty was out doing his rounds or whatever, and I had gotten out of the cab at the group headquarters, and here's the sergeant major. And
Wow. Man,
but-
that's a good individual to meet, on day one.
Oh, absolutely. And to take the lessons learned there, I watched that man give all of his emotions over Marines that we'd lost to civilian diving accidents, just dumb stuff. He was absolutely as firm as could be, but fair.
Yeah.
And was
Yeah.
actually honored enough to be meritoriously promoted twice by Sergeant Major Kellogg, once to corporal and
no
then
kidding.
again to sergeant before I left the island.
Wow. So
So
hold on. So you were meritorious Lance Corporal out of boot camp, and
Yep.
then meritorious Corporal and meritorious Sergeant.
correct.
Is that correct? Dang,
Absolutely.
you were a rock star in it. That was
And,
good.
Well, shit, I could run a 1530 PFT.
Oh my God.
Life takes hold somewhere in there. And before I left Camp Lejeune, I had gotten married,
Okay.
had a baby, and had an infant when I transferred to Hawaii, because I thought, well, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a Marine.
Yeah.
So I've got that path set in my mind. The next thing I need is the house with a white picket fence, the wife, the dog, the kid. And was a little too young for that.
Yeah.
At the time. So things happen. I'm sure the term Westpac widows.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I've definitely heard that one.
I left on a 6-month rotation to an advanced school and came back a week early. So I got the surprise of my life when I got back.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
and realized what it's like to spend 48 hours in a Honolulu jail.
Oh,
That wasn't
dang.
a whole lot of fun.
Yeah, I imagine so. Yeah. Yeah. Probably
But,
wasn't a whole lot of fun when you got out either.
No, not having to go face Sergeant Major Kellogg.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Holy cow.
but retained my rank, explained the situation, and he got it. He didn't make it easy on me, but he got it. But I
Yeah.
actually ended up as NCO of the quarter for 7 consecutive quarters
What?
in the 3 years
Wow.
that I was there.
That's
So you know how
insane.
they have those stupid little plaques that have
Yeah.
NCO of the quarter and it's got your picture. Instead of
Right. Yeah.
replacing it, they kept putting tabs up underneath my name in the company office, and it looked like a World War II rifle badge with all the little tabs up under it. It was
Yeah.
hilarious. But
That's awesome.
when I finally got promoted, the major I had, Major Smith, had designed a company leadership award, which I was the
Okay.
first and I think the only recipient of, because he ended up getting orders out shortly after that. But
Mm.
they had given me the company leadership award, and I have a copy of that in my records
Ah,
here,
that's
which
really cool.
I thought was pretty cool. Major Smith was a good guy, combat vet, Vietnam vet, Mustanger, one of the last true Mustangers.
Nice.
And when Sergeant Major Kellogg promoted me, I flew my mom out.
Yeah.
And so he managed to get her out into the formation as I'm standing on the end of the formation, managed to go down, get her, bring her up. She did the pinning, and somebody had given her a heads up because she pinned my chevrons. My little 5 foot mom, both hands straight down, just as hard as she could
Yeah.
muster without taking me out. And then Sergeant Major looks at her and said, "I got you out here. I don't know how to get you back." She said, "That's all right. Fuck it. I know how to get back." And she turned around, walked off, and left him standing there.
Very nice.
He looked at
Oh
me and
man.
said, "I know where you get it. Now stay the hell out of my office and give somebody else a chance."
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is awesome.
So, but again,
Oh man.
it was the 80s. Things were a little bit
Yeah.
different then. And so I was there from 86 to 89, and then they sent me off to Cherry Point in
Okay.
89. And I ended up at MWSS 274, the Iron Man, under Colonel G.
Okay.
And we had Colonel G's barracks were ridiculous. That barracks at 274 was cleaner than the hospitals. The
Oh
old
my
H,
God.
the old H style barracks.
Right.
You could not wear footgear inside those outer hatches. You had to take your boots off at the hatch
No
and go
kidding.
in your socks,
Wow.
because that particular barracks at 274 for Colonel G had the Barracks of the Year award for multiple years, and he was not going to let that go.
Yeah. Oh man. You
So
know
I
that
get in.
I guess that's a good thing in a sense for the unit, but it's also kind of a bad thing because you can't really live in your house or your home, right? In the
Oh yeah,
barracks.
it was hard. We spent every waking hour trying to figure out how to get out of the barracks.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
But the discipline was definitely there in the unit.
yeah.
You could tell it in the formations, in the uniforms. The Marines were squared away, locked on. You didn't have to worry about waiting for somebody to show up, no matter what time they rolled in from the clubs outside of Cherry Point.
Yeah.
They were in formation. They might
Hmm.
not be standing straight. They were waving a little bit, but they were in formation.
Yeah. I
And
think we've all
so,
been there at some point in time.
yep, I actually ended up getting a page 11, my first page 11, 2 days after I
Okay.
checked in.
No kidding.
I checked in as a sergeant, so here I am thinking I'm hard as nails because
Yeah.
I'm all my promotions are meritorious, and they didn't have room for a sergeant, so they put me down in the police sergeant's room. And he's
Okay.
on leave, won't be a big deal. I checked in on Wednesday, field day was Thursday.
Yeah.
So thinking about how clean this barracks is, it's like, oh my God. So I go through and I field day the whole room. I need one wall locker and one secretary. That's all I need. So I had to take a bunch of his extra stuff out,
Uh-huh.
organize it neatly, stack it up. I mean, even the racks, the secretaries, everything were literally 6 inches from the walls,
Wow.
so you could see behind them. That's how particular this was.
Yeah.
And inspections Friday morning. Well, I had this clock that I had hand carried from Hawaii
Right. Okay.
because it was precious to me.
Hmm.
And he had a TV, one of those big box TVs. We all got big TVs and giant stereo systems from
Yeah.
the exchange or wherever back in those days.
That's
And
right.
so I set the clock on top of his TV. That was the only place to put it, the only
Yeah.
place it would fit. Well, him knocking that off at about 2:30, 3 o'clock in the morning is what woke me up.
Oh,
So yeah, the tempers flared, the fight got started, and I'm the new kid on the block. So now we're outside the hatch and we're in the H passageway, and I'm just going up and down the passageway with him, trying to tell him not to get up, not to get up, not to get up. And he gets up again, and somebody reached up and grabbed me from behind. I turned around and swung at them two. Biggest damn warrant officer I had ever seen in my life. Chief Warrant Officer Shaw. I was like,
I love it.
damn it, there it goes. You know, my career is done. I'm over. And all he said was, I'll meet you in the duty hut. Roger that,
Yeah.
sir. Got it. Message received. So
Oh, man.
get in, put my uniform on, meet him down in the duty hut. He says, I got some things to finish up. You stay right here. We'll go see the colonel later on this morning. About 1400, I finally get through the first sergeant, through the sergeant major, get to see the colonel. And he's up one side and down the other. It's got the page 11, said, you need to sign this page 11 entry. I'm not going to NJP you because you just got here. And can you afford to live out in town? I said, sir, yes, sir. He said, good. You got 24 hours to get the F out of my barracks.
Oh,
Put me on
dang.
BAH. And oh, by the way, meet your new OIC, Chief Warrant Officer Shaw.
Well, that's a good introduction.
Yeah, that was an interesting run. But it turned out it was, you know, there were a lot of good lessons learned there, obviously,
Mhm.
some better than others.
Right.
But again, here we are dealing with the combat mindset versus the peacetime mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
you know the differences in leadership, and you know those that had been to combat from Vietnam and had come through that
Mhm.
process, and you could see the young lieutenants, the captains, those that hadn't been through that scenario
Right.
coming in the peacetime. And I mean, he laid it out for me. He said, "You're going to have a rough time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a given."
Yeah.
And then the Gulf War broke out while I was still attached to MWSS 274.
Mhm.
So we were all out in town, and we got the call, and it was in August, and they said, "Look, pack your trash. We're going.
Yeah.
It's game on. This is not a drill. Everybody report back to the base. Gather up all your
Mhm.
gear, and we'll meet you on the flight line." Got on
Wow.
the flight line. We started getting our briefs, you know, and that was it's an unforgettable moment when you know, okay,
Mhm.
we're getting ready to punch out, and you know
Yeah.
we're catching flights to Kuwait. Some of us were catching flights to Kuwait. Then we got segregated and said, okay, this group's going on the flights because this is their priorities. This group here, you're going out to Morehead City. You're going to get on the boats. You're going to float through.
Mhm. Oh, wow. Okay.
I was on one of the crews that went out on the boats because that's where the equipment was. And I, as a maintenance guy,
Right.
you know, they needed mechanics. So I ended up on the boat. And we floated
Okay.
through the Suez Canal and learned a lot there. You know, no liberty, stuck on the boats, getting through the Suez. You can see the damage and the destruction as we're going through the Suez. From the
Yeah.
Egyptian side, we got fired upon a few times from small arms. You know, just
No
the
kidding.
turmoil and the
Wow.
torment that went through there.
Yeah. Holy
So,
cow.
and I remember at one point the gangplank had come off the side of the USS Iwo Jima. So here
Uh-huh.
we are on an LPH, my first experience with a big boat, and I'm on a flat bottom LPH
Yeah.
going through the Atlantic. Yeah, glad I was on the top rack and buckled in.
You'd have to
that
be
thing-
buckled in doing that.
Oh
That
yeah,
flat
and you
boat
hear
just-
the waves slapping the side of the boat, and you're like, I swear it's going to come right through the wall any minute now.
That's pretty wild. Oh man. So how long did it take you on that boat to get all the way across and ready for Desert Storm?
We were in the water for 48, 49 days, something like that,
No kidding. Wow.
because we had some mechanical issues. You know, we had
Uh-huh.
some stops along the way, but obviously nobody was getting off the boat. We had the unreps. You know, definitely learned to do an unrep, ship
Yeah.
to ship, helicopter to ship, you know, and get it from the top deck down into the holds the hard way.
Yeah.
learned about there's a good thing about being only 5'6" when you're on a boat. You don't have to duck as much when you're going through the hatchways.
Yeah, it's true.
Several buddies of mine took a few stitches to the forehead trying to jump through the gangways.
Oh man.
So, it's and you know it too. You hear them, and then you hear that thump. Okay, that one's down. Medic, somebody get me a corpsman up.
Oh man, that's wild.
But just learning how to run basically chain gangs.
Mm-hmm.
But at one point, going through the Suez, the gangplank had come off the side of the boat.
Right.
And we couldn't leave it. We couldn't stop. So we're like, the Navy's trying to figure out how are we going to do this? How are we going to do this? So me and my welder, got a couple of welders, we get a bright idea. Well, shit, Coelho's only 5 foot tall. Let's just rig him up a Ranger seat. We learned all about it because we went through Hearst training and all that prior to doing some other training evolutions. So we hung our little welder in a Ranger seat off the side of the boat with an oxyacetylene kit so he could weld the gangplank at least back in place so we could get through the Suez.
Oh, wow. I love that though. Putting your training to good use there. That was awesome.
Yep. And somehow or another, I ended up training machine gun teams.
Okay.
So because I had been to a lot of rear area security training, and I had an interest in it.
Yeah.
I should have been an 0331 in my mind.
Right.
So I ended up taking every MCI course for 0331, and I put in for the school when the Gulf War broke out.
Oh wow.
But our machine gun teams, we practiced breaking them down and putting them back together blindfolded right there in the quarterdecks.
Yeah.
And rotating the gunners in and out. I don't know what your MOS was.
I was in the band, but I know all about rear area security and heavy weapons because that's what we did in time of war, heavy weapons platoons. So
Provisional Rifle Company.
Yeah, gotta love it.
So, but once we got there, we were offloading the ammo. We were at the port of Jubal, and I was there when one of the trams we had been offloading for so long. The operator he got tired, dozed off, and drove right off the edge of the pier.
Whoa!
So, and there was no saving him. That tram, the big scoop loader with the fork attachments, big single cab center steer. It went down so fast. He didn't drown. He suffocated. The water pressure had closed everything in on the cab, and before we could get to him, he had suffocated.
No kidding. Wow. That is insane. I wonder how quick did that go down? Like, there was no floating whatsoever. I mean, I imagine it was lead weight.
It was minutes. You're talking about 64,000 pounds of steel. Yeah. And the only thing you have is the one cab.
Yeah.
Everything else is external. That cab wasn't enough to support it for anything. So when it went down fast, and the only thing that kept it was the water pressure kept him from being able to open the doors. It went down so fast. And there's only one door.
Yeah. Man. Whew. That's a tough way to go right there.
So couldn't imagine that. But that's where we learned that the MRE spaghetti was not a good thing to eat. The spaghetti in every MRE kit that we had made somebody sick.
Really?
Every single time. So spaghetti was that was the hidden curse. If you got spaghetti in your MRE box, nope, get rid of the box. Find another one.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, I hadn't heard that before. I never had issues with spaghetti ones, but they probably got a little bit better over time though, I suppose. So.
Yeah, well, during the Gulf War, the wolf cookies, the hay bales, the little oatmeal cookies that came in a square block.
Yeah,
they made good projectiles. So we were living in the port warehouses, and so we had each unit had their pallets and their racks set up in the port warehouse, and I had pallets all the way around mine with caution tape. We had set it up, just so that we could easily pick out ourselves.
Yeah.
And for fun, we played poker, but we didn't have anything to bet, so we bet push-ups.
Oh, nice.
And First Sergeant Featherston, I don't know if you remember him, Sergeant Major Featherston. He was at Quantico for a while.
That name sounds familiar to me.
Yeah, he actually
Featherstone.
ran all of the schools for Quantico, the
Okay.
staff NCO course, the advanced course, all of that.
Yeah.
He was the first sergeant at MP Company when we were out there. And he came by and he heard all the ruckus in the back corner and he looked, and I had carved this little monkey on a pole with a pocket knife, and I set it on the front of our pallets, and I called it the Motor Monkey Zoo. And we had caution tape wrapped around our pallets, and we were in the back corner of it playing poker, and he went to come in the front, and the Marine stopped him. Said, "No, you can't come in here." He said, "I'm first sergeant." I said, "Yeah, but you're not our first sergeant. You can't come in here." So he walked around the back and he said, "Who's in charge?" And I was like, "Oh shit, that would be me." And he asked what was going on, and I told him, we were playing poker, and he said, "What are you betting?" And there was insinuation behind that. I said, "The only thing we have, first sergeant, we're betting push-ups, and I've got some
Yeah.
damn strong Marines." And we got left alone after that.
Yeah.
So
Wow.
that was pretty good. But we had an opportunity to run a few convoys out of there and get some ammo loadouts and see what was going on. Several of us got caught actually transitioning over the highway to hell after all the damage and destruction, trying to get resupplies out.
Right.
So, had a lot of that exposure.
Okay.
And after I got back, I had spent maybe 6 months back. We did a full 13-month rotation and got back, and I ended up with orders, and they're like, "Okay, well, this is your dwell time. You just came back from imminent danger and an imminent danger zone. So where do you want to go?" And I had been dating a young lady before I left. We had talked about getting married. We got married when I got back from war, and she went off to the Air Force. And I thought, okay, well, we'll make this work. So I'm looking at I&I staff. They'll work it out and put us together somewhere. So I ended up with I&I staff, Charleston, South Carolina.
Okay.
And right outside the Air Force Base. So, but in 4 years, we saw each other like maybe 6 months and decided, yeah, this isn't going to work. Neither one of us willing to give in our careers. But met another good, solid first sergeant there. The first sergeant I had was a former Army Green Beret and Ranger.
Wow.
And he was a major when he resigned his commission in the Army and joined the Marine Corps, and ended up going Marine Corps reconnaissance as enlisted.
No kidding. Wow.
And got all the way to first sergeant. And I was
insane.
like, wow, when we went to the ball and he put on his dress blues, you want to talk about ringing your ear. Just a whole chest full of medals and hard as nails, good guy, not real big, but just tough as they come.
Wow.
Made a mistake of teaching him how to operate a bulldozer.
Uh-oh.
And so being I&I staff, we're responsible for training the reservists, and we got to get all this, get them in and out to the field operations, find field operations. So we had some land clearing ops where, we were clearing baseball fields for schools. And in 1 year, I put 3 windshields in the same bulldozer.
Oh, no.
After that, I quit putting windshields in, and I just had the welders build me a cage, and I put the windshield in the supply locker. Said when it comes time for the CGI, I'll put the windshield in.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's wild.
So, but did my time out there. Actually went from active duty. I was at 10 years active duty. I got promoted to staff sergeant literally 4 months before I put on my second hash mark.
Wow.
So I hit the zones right. They opened up the promotions, and now I'm a staff sergeant.
Okay.
So 4 months later, I got my hash mark. So I can actually say I got staff sergeant before I got my second hash mark.
Yeah,
and,
that's awesome.
I've got that promotion photo.
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's especially what year was that? 90. What was it?
That
98?
was 91.
Oh, 91. Okay.
Yeah, we got back from the Gulf War.
Okay. That was back when the Marine Corps was much smaller, and promotions were much more difficult to get. So be able to pick up staff sergeant, before your 8-year mark, that's awesome.
Yeah. Well, you also have to factor in that during that time period when the Gulf War kicked off, we kind of lowered the bar a little bit because we had to grow to meet
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
requirement for the 221,000 that they wanted on active and reserve at that time.
Right.
So
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, it opened up a lot, which helped me out in the long run.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
Yeah.
but my opinion, it hurt the Marine Corps later on down the line because we did lower the bar, and all those cats and dogs had to do was just stay out of trouble. And now here we are in the late 90s and 2000s and on. And those cats and dogs that stayed out of trouble are now in the senior leadership billets, and we've got a
Yeah.
whole different attitude.
Yeah.
So, but
Yeah.
because
that's
of
true.
my mentors, you know, I mean, I had Sergeant Major Kellogg teaching me how to be
Mhm.
senior enlisted. I had a lot of good officers. I had, you know, the Major Smiths,
Mhm.
the Major Browns, and then I've got First Sergeant. What was his name now? This is part of the problem when your brain is Swiss cheese.
Are you talking about the first sergeant that you had at I&I?
Yeah, at I&I, because he did a
Yeah.
lot more than just, you know, run the instructor staff. He taught us a lot of tactics. He
Mhm.
gave us, you know, a lot of PMEs on combat leadership, you know, leadership in combat, you know, handling different
Right.
scenarios and stressors. And, you know, we did a lot of tactical role playing games.
Mhm.
You know, when we
Wow.
got out to the field, you know, he was just a solid individual and was all about the Marine Corps and preparing the Marines.
Yeah.
Because after what we just went through in the 90s, you know, we knew it wasn't finished.
Mhm.
It went too fast. The way it ended,
Yeah.
those guys with experience absolutely knew it wasn't done.
Oh, yeah,
Something
for
else was
sure.
coming. You couldn't say when or where, but something else was coming.
Mhm.
So, but at that time, I had been in an ugly custody battle for my son,
Mhm.
and got into it with the monitor. Had a brief discussion. And I said, "Look, I just need one more year on station. You can
Yeah.
send me anywhere in the world after that. I just need one more year to finish this." He said, "Well, you can't have it." So he cuts me orders to go to Japan unaccompanied, gave me 30 days to leave, and I was 60 days from my EAS without confirming a
Holy cow.
reenlistment. And so my little dumbass, being as belligerent as I was, you know, I was still cocky as all get out.
Yeah.
And so I called him and I said, "Well, then we don't need to have a conversation. If this is true, what you're telling me is that you're telling me that I can't extend, then you're telling me that this is a 7-year rotation, because the gunny I replaced when I got here was here for 7 years. I'm only asking for one."
Yeah.
He hung up on me, and that's when I got the orders.
Oh,
So that
geez.
was how I ended up getting the orders. But I said, "Well, okay." I talked to First Sergeant, and he said, "Well, you have an option. You're already here. You know the unit. Just transfer into the reserves. You'll have to get a civilian job."
Mhm.
So I did. Never left.
Oh,
Transferred into
wow.
the reserves. Got everything settled.
Mhm.
Stayed in the reserves, and then while I was in the reserves, the towers got hit.
Okay.
But most of my time in the reserves was at ADSW, getting
Mhm.
put on active duty to go do load test inspections because I was a load test certified inspector, to go
Right.
stand up a school in Youngstown, Ohio. So I was still technically on active duty, but as a reservist.
Hmm.
So all my time was still accumulating
Right.
as active duty time.
Wow.
And then during
Okay.
that process, I got promoted to gunny and then
Mhm.
later to first sergeant on the reserve side of the house.
Right.
The towers get hit, and I'm with my current wife. We've been married now for 25 years,
Mhm.
and I was like, I gotta go. You know,
Yeah.
this is bad. This is real bad. You know, a lot of bad things happened there, but I ended up rolling out with Second Beach and Terminal Operations Company on the first rotation. We
Mhm.
were a reinforcement company, so rolled straight out to Fallujah
Mhm.
and Taqadum, and we're running. We were supposed to be indirect support. When we got there, the direct support unit packed up all of the armor plating for the vehicles.
Whoa.
And, you know, at that time, you know, it was just that, what do they call that? A specific type of steel, you know, that you just slap on the doors. And, you know,
Right.
people
Yeah,
were,
yeah.
we were cutting ventilated angle iron and, you know, rigging
Mhm.
things. Well, they packed up all the armor, and we had 100 vehicles that we had to get from the port through Iraq into TQ.
Oh my God.
So we're like, okay, well, you know, we got to go. We scrounged everything we could. We made everything that we could. We finally get
Mhm.
in. We got hit 3 or 4 different times along the route. Managed to.
And this is just going into Tecum, right?
Yeah, this is just
Yeah.
getting into Tecum. And
Wow.
so we finally get in there, and they set us up and say, okay, well, this is your motor pool. Well, we're right across the pathway from the direct support motor pool.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get my armor. I got the master sergeant with me. Master sergeant and I got to be really close during all of the training and everything else.
Mhm.
We're going to get our armor. You know,
Yeah.
we've got a mission just like they do. It got a little bit ugly, and it turns out they couldn't handle the direct support mission. So we ended up not only getting the armor, but actually swapping vehicles with them, going
No
through the
kidding.
whole process because the armor was already put on their vehicles and taking their direct support mission.
Wow.
And they ended up in indirect support. And
Holy
so we
cow.
ran that, and we were
Now-
there for 13 months.
Now was this with the reserve unit?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. Got
Yeah,
it.
they had moved me from Second Beach and Terminal Operations Company. I had gotten attached to a landing support battalion,
Mhm.
and so now
Okay,
we're
that
landing
makes sense.
support. You know, the red patchers. If you see this one, don't get in.
Yeah.
If all you see is the one on the leg, it's okay to get in.
Yeah. Yeah.
We used to call them high and low water markers.
I like that. Okay.
So, but did that. You know, had my first experience with no kidding combat operations, and
Mhm.
that's where I got my first car. Well, yeah, I got my first car in that one.
Okay.
So, but then came back from that and was fighting to stay on active duty.
Right.
You know, I had been mobilized for so long. I had been mobilized literally for 3 years straight, living away from my wife and kids. They were in Georgia. I was stationed at Camp Lejeune when everything kicked off. And because I was a reservist, I was technically TAD. I wasn't PCS, so I couldn't move my
Yeah.
family.
Wow.
So I read through all the orders, you know, and went back and forth with it. And they have at that time it was called the long name board, because
Okay.
you couldn't pronounce it. They just called it the long name board to
Okay.
transition from reserve back to active duty. And
Okay.
literally
Yeah, that makes sense.
got into a heated discussion with Sergeant Major Perez, the headquarters Marine Corps personnel sergeant major at that time.
Hmm.
I was at the first sergeant's course in Quantico and got into a heated discussion with him.
Hmm.
And he said point blank, there's no way in hell you're going from reserve first sergeant to active duty as a first sergeant. You'll go back as a staff sergeant. I said, I'm not trying to be a pain in the ass, Sergeant Major, but that's not what the order says. I have the order right here. He stopped my package on 3 prior occasions. While I was at the first sergeant's course, I walked it to every station it had to go to for the signature.
Yeah.
I would, you know, when we go on break, I'd grab my package, I'd go to the next room.
Hmm.
On break, I got my package, I'd go to admin. On break, got my
Yeah.
package, I'd go see the sergeant major. On break, got my package, I'd go see the colonel.
Hmm.
You know, and I got my signatures. The results beat me back to Camp Lejeune.
Oh, really?
And before I could get finished with the first sergeant's course, I had been cut orders to go back to Camp Lejeune as a first sergeant. And retaining my original date of rank, all I had to do was swear in when I got there.
Wow. That's awesome.
So, and I ran into, at that time, it was Sergeant Major Ruff.
Okay.
And I checked in with Ruff, you know, another combat vet, you know, heroic guy and big burly dude. And he's
Mhm.
like, I don't know what to do with you. I've never had anybody do this before. He said, so we're going to send you over to 6th Marines.
Oh, nice.
So I
Okay.
ended up going over to 6th Marines. Now
Very
here I
nice.
am at 15 years and I'm a first sergeant.
Uh-huh.
And I was like, okay, apparently somewhere along the way, Mom was right. I'm not doing too bad. So I get over to 6th Marines and I check into 6th Marines and I check in with Sergeant Major Bruce Poland.
Oh yeah. Okay.
And his favorite phrase, you're going to have to edit this out. His
Oh, it's
favorite
okay.
phrase,
It's all right.
his favorite phrase is, I'll horse fuck you and then kill you. Like, Jesus. So I check in with him. He's like, well, you're going straight to headquarters company. So you do realize I'm the junior first sergeant? He said, yep. But you're going over to headquarters company. So I went
Wow.
straight to headquarters 6, didn't even at the regiment, didn't even go to any of the battalions, nothing, went straight to regiment.
Holy cow.
I did the
Well, that's not
transition at regiment.
normally the senior first sergeant does that headquarters, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Ah, that's
Which
interesting.
it caught me off guard.
Mm-hmm.
And then once I get down there, they say, well, we've already deployed the regiment to Afghanistan. They did Afghanistan a couple of years earlier. Said, now we're getting ready to deploy the regiment to Iraq.
Mm-hmm.
And you have 9 months. There are 380 bodies, or no, 580 bodies on your roster, but you have to have 360 deployed capable.
Oh wow.
And at that time, everybody that couldn't deploy, where did they go?
It went to the
Regimental
headquarters.
headquarters, because headquarters never left.
Yeah.
So we got into a very good system. The Marine Corps mentorship program was coming up. So we helped rewrite, redesign the Marine Corps mentorship program and said, this is how we're going to do it. Got it approved. Then started getting through the medical evaluations, got in good with the hospital, learned, okay, what all do we need? How do we expedite the process? Went to legal. So I spent hours and hours and hours with legal. Okay, I need to know your process. I need to know how we can expedite this. And in 9 months, we went from 560 something to 391 fully deployment capable Marines, and still had time to give them 30 days pre-deployment leave.
No kidding.
When our packages went up to Vision, the only reason they came back was with a 10-day letter attached. That, okay,
wow,
you're done. And it wasn't me. It was just capitalizing on the leadership and the experience that was already there, and then taking those senior leaders and saying, okay, look, go with me. Let's figure this out, because we all have a part to play.
Yeah.
And when I first stepped into it, I got a lot of guys that had already been to Afghanistan, had been to Iraq multiple times, senior leadership.
Right.
And I pulled them in, and, there's always that friction between the master sergeant side and the first sergeant side.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I made it clear. I pulled them in. I said, look, don't tell me how to do my job, and I won't tell you how to do yours. But I can guarantee you, with my background and my diverse skill sets, there's not a one of you that I cannot replace by myself right here today. How many of you can say the same and come up here and do this job? And nobody had ever done that to them before.
Yeah.
But after that, I mean, we had a phenomenal team. All of us got along great. In 14 months of combat operations, never lost a single Marine.
Oh, wow.
Wounded several, but never lost a single Marine. And everybody worked together. There were never any issues. We had set up video calls where we would get the cameras with the mini discs and allow the Marines to come in and read videos to their kids or to their families and send them out. And just, had a constant supply chain of that going. We were doing reading groups where we would connect with schools back in the States, and the captain and I would go in and we would read children's books to these schools via video conference. Right. And go out, go on mission, come back, go sit in a room and read kids' books.
Yeah.
During that process, I ended up with Sergeant Major Robert Terry out in Fallujah. They did a transition from Poland to Terry. And so I've got Sergeant Major Terry, and he was one of the first sergeant majors when they opened up MARSOC.
Mm-hmm.
And good guy, but once he found out we had an Xbox that had Sniper Elite, that was my end of day routine. Was I would get a call from the sergeant major, "Hey, you ready to get your ass kicked?" And we'd have to set up the Xbox at the end of a mission, middle of the night. He and I are sitting there playing Sniper Elite.
That's great.
But it was just, you have to break up the monotony, and we had so many good, solid leaders that I learned so much from coming along the way, and learned that it's not, Sergeant Major is not what made me who I am.
Mm-hmm.
It's who I am that made me a Sergeant Major. And I learned that lesson early on with Sergeant Major Kellogg. The first sergeant that I had, I don't know why I can't remember his name right now. It'll come to me about 2:00 in the morning. The majors, the Sergeant Major Terrys. I served with Sergeant Major Booker, Silver Star recipient, before I left 6th Marines and went over to SOI. I got over to SOI as a first sergeant, ended up relieving a sergeant major for some legal issues. So when you look at the plaques, it says, H&S Battalion, Sergeant Major, Sergeant Major, Sergeant Major, First Sergeant, and then Sergeant Major.
Yeah.
But I took those lessons learned, and one of the biggest takeaways was I never cared about my fitness reports.
Mm-hmm.
What I cared about was the Marines.
Yeah.
And if I was right, I was going to stand firm. I took my lumps. If I made a mistake, own up to the mistake.
Yeah.
I wasn't perfect. I had my issues. I had my page 11s. I had my derogatory entries. I've had nip locks, non-punitive letters of caution.
Oh yeah. I know all about that. Yeah.
But I learned that somewhere innate inside of me was something that drew people towards me.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to make the best use of that I could, because there was a reason for it.
Right.
And in that process, this was where it got tough. It was tough on my family.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, I almost lost my wife. Now we've been married for 25 years. She went through 2 of those very long deployments with me, and a couple of them where couldn't reach out to her, couldn't get in touch with her. It was months before I could get in contact with her, and couldn't tell her where I was, what I was doing, that kind of thing. And she'd never been associated with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then we had,
that's tough.
Yeah, she had 2 boys. They were 3 and 11 months when we got together.
Mm-hmm.
And then 7 years later, we had our daughter.
Mm-hmm.
So she had been through the peacetime process, through the reserve, through the transition, one of those deployments, and then caught 2 more deployments after that.
Right.
And next thing you know, I'm in decision-making mode. So I make a decision as we're coming to the close. It's like, okay, it's time to figure out life. Where am I going? They gave me an option. I went from 6th Marines over to SOI, School of Infantry East.
Right.
Did my tour at School of Infantry East, got selected as Sergeant Major.
You got selected there. Okay.
Yep.
Got it.
Got selected to Sergeant Major, and by the time the board results let out, there were only 5 people senior to me, so I was one of the first on the promotion list.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it was like, as soon as I got selected, they said, "Yeah, you're getting promoted next month, so stand by." I get promoted, and then the next thing I know, they're saying, "Well, you can't stay here."
Yeah. Got to go somewhere else.
So your choices are RS Boise, Idaho, or RS Orlando, Florida. Sure as hell wasn't going to Idaho.
Yeah, no kidding. Good choice.
But, yeah. The wife wanted to go overseas, wanted to go to Japan, but I'm thinking, okay, not sure how much longer this is going to hold out. So I make the decision to come here. That caused a flurry of things, but we managed to work through it.
Mm-hmm.
And then retirement hit. And the retirement is where it got real bad.
Mm-hmm.
I had been diagnosed when I got back in 2008, was when they diagnosed me the first time with PTSD.
Right.
And so that's when I had to learn, my mom was a psychiatric nurse. She was married to a psychiatrist for several years as I was growing up. So I spent my childhood combating that.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I was smart. That was I got
Right.
this beat,
Mm-hmm.
but going through that whole process and just trying to figure out, okay, what do I do?
Right.
I have literally been in the Marine Corps since I was 17 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And now what? All that's taken away.
Yep.
And I could have continued on because of, the transition from reserve years to active years. I could have
Right.
gone another 10 years, but I didn't want to lose my wife and my kids.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Got my first diagnosis with PTSD, got out. I'm out here in Orlando and I go to the VA and I'm going through the transition process. Got a successful tour as recruiting command sergeant major,
Mm-hmm.
but it was tough. Every day
Yeah.
was a closed door session with me and a major. We just
Yeah.
didn't get along. We never failed to make mission, but every time he had an interaction with a group of Marines, I had a combat tested Marine on suicide watch over
Oh,
recruiting numbers.
right. Yeah.
So it was all bad. I'd rather go get shot at.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And so
absolutely.
I stressed out more as an RS sergeant major than I ever did on any of my other deployments or duty stations. Even
Mm-hmm.
at SOI, when you're training kids to go to combat, you're day on,
Yeah.
stay on for months at a time. It wasn't as bad as being out here.
Yeah.
So
There's something that happens for whatever reason, on recruiting duty. I was never on recruiting duty, but it's tough. I mean, if you're not in a good area, it can be relentless.
yeah, but that was the thing. We had a great area. We're Central Florida.
Yeah.
100 recruiters, 80 vehicles, never failed to make mission, not one single time. Reduced the attrition rate by over 6%, male and female, and just kept pressing. And these guys kept going. But for whatever reason, after an interaction with the CO, something would go awry. And
Wow.
just trying to work that. And he and I just didn't get along.
Mm-hmm.
We couldn't make it work. I've had bad COs before. He's not a bad CO for an artillery unit, but wrong guy for a recruiting command.
Right.
We're trying to take these kids away from moms, dads, grandmas, grandpas, and their aunts and uncles.
Right.
And so they're just the wrong guy for that environment, which made it hell on me because I had to protect my Marines
Yeah,
and still keep the
absolutely.
numbers up. And then they sent me through a
Wow.
transition assistance class at an Air Force base. And the guys giving me the transition assistance class had been out of the workforce for 20 years and retired out of the service for 20 years prior to that.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, so I'll take what I got. My first job as a retired sergeant major was doing construction on the VA hospital out here where I live.
No kidding. Wow.
$11 an hour.
Whoa.
That was all I could find the way they taught me to write my resume.
Well, that's unfortunate.
So I went from 165 pounds down to 130 within months of my retirement because I took the job. It took me 24 hours to learn how to run the fireproofing machine, a week to take over both crews, and 4 months to put both crews on layoff because we went too fast. We got too far ahead of the sheetrockers with the fireproofing. So they laid us all off. My wife
That's
was like,
crazy.
hey, we have this thing out here in the civilian community called pace yourself. I'm like, I'm just not wired that way.
Yeah.
So I got ready to retire and asked the kids, okay, we got one move anywhere in the world you want to go. Where do you want to go? Immediately. I got one in high school, one on his way to high school. And the
Yeah.
boy said, we just want to graduate high school in one school.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, whatever it takes. I ended up working 2 full-time jobs and a part-time job on top of my VA approved loan to get the income necessary to stay in the area that I'm in now.
Wow.
But did it for 12 months. Went from $11 an hour to $80K a year as a program manager without a college degree.
Dang. That's
But
awesome.
the thing is, to show the kids, as a man, it's not about, being nice and bending over backwards and doing all this. Yes, those play a part, but it's about doing what's necessary, doing what you have to do to take care of your family.
Yeah.
My wife and I discussed it 20 years ago that I was going to be the one to finish out the work because somebody needed to be home with the kids.
Mm-hmm.
And, she runs the house. We said,
Yeah.
okay, well, this is your job. You run the house.
Yep.
We'll discuss the finances. I'll bring in the money. We talk about where it's going to go, how it's going to get there, but you run the house.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm
That's
just the
awesome.
laborer at that point.
Right.
And she's never had to work. And I made sure of that. And
Yeah,
my
that's
boys
great.
now are both girl dads. I have a
Oh,
7-month and a 10-month-old granddaughter,
no kidding.
one from each of the boys.
Yeah.
And, now they're starting to get it.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and my daughter changed my whole world. When they put a little girl in your hands, you're like, it's not done yet. What do I do with it?
It's not done yet. That was
There's
perfect.
pieces missing,
Yeah. That's funny.
and you just, when she looked at me, that changed my whole world.
Yeah.
So working like that and running 2 full-time jobs and a part-time job and then consistently climbing and climbing and climbing,
Mhm.
that was my mindset. Okay, well, now I'm a program manager. I'm an entry-level program manager. Well, I'm going to move up to the next level.
Yeah.
And I spent 8 years working as a DoD contract program manager. Had
Wow.
all of the Marine Corps simulations devices under a maintenance contract.
Hmm.
Over 700 devices, 90 people, 18 locations. And I
Wow.
ran them all. And I did that for 8 years. Did the first 5, rewrote the contract, learned how to do all the contracting stuff, got the
Yeah.
recompete. And then at the end of that, was told, well, I just don't have anything else for you. Contract ended in 48 hours.
Whoa.
Fortunately, I had apparently somewhere along the way made a pretty good reputation. So I got a call from Department of the Navy out here.
Mhm.
Said, hey, let's talk. So now I'm a program manager on the acquisition side for the Department of the Navy.
Ah, okay.
But having
Very
all of
nice.
those things to focus on, I wasn't focusing on me, my self-care. I thought I had it
Mhm.
under control. I was in
Yeah.
counseling. I was therapy. First it was twice a week, then it went to once a week. Then it went to once every other week. They've got me on medication. They tinkered with the medications over the last 12 years,
Mhm.
highs and lows on the medications.
Yeah.
And my wife, God bless her, has stuck it out. And,
Mhm.
I mean, I still strike out in my sleep. There's,
Sorry,
yeah,
my dog's barking again. Go ahead, say that one more time.
there's times when I still strike out in my sleep.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
I've woke myself up a few times doing it. She's figured out she can reach over and rub my shoulder, or if it's real bad, if I start twitching real bad, she'll just wrap me up like an octopus. So I
Oh,
can't
really?
move,
Wow. Yeah.
and I'll wake up.
Wow.
But I did a lot of research on PTSD, and so
Mhm.
I started helping vets. One of my full-time jobs was working as a staffing firm representative.
Mhm.
I can't call it a recruiter because I work specifically with vets on the Volt Military Heroes program.
Mhm.
Because when they contacted me, they wanted to talk sales. I'm like, where in the hell in my resume does it say anything about sales?
Yeah.
So finally got down to what they really wanted. They wanted somebody to come in and help them stand up their veterans program because nobody knew. So I said, fine, I'll take it, but we're doing it on a salary. I'm not doing commission, et cetera, et
Mhm.
cetera. Increase their veterans candidate pool by 30% and increase their correct veteran placement by 33% in under 12 months.
Wow.
Just by teaching them to translate veteran skill sets, teaching myself how to translate those skill sets and
Mhm.
put those skill sets into a resume. And after I left that, I still do it for vets, but at no charge.
Very
I have
nice.
people send me vets and come talk to me. I'm working with a guy right now, another Silver Star recipient, just retired out
Mhm.
of Tampa, out of SOCOM,
Oh, wow.
and he's struggling with the transition. And I was like, you know what? Let me just go sit down with him and got him straight. We got his resume out, and right now he's interviewing for a position at Department of the Navy.
Nice. That's
So,
good.
it's just hopefully that, I don't know. Like I said, I don't think my story is that interesting. There's a lot of humor in it, but I did what needed to be done because I had good leadership on my end. I had
Right.
a lot of absolutely solid mentors. And then when I made a mistake, I had people that stood behind me rather than chastise me. I paid the
Absolutely. Yeah.
price. I absolutely paid the price for those mistakes, but they stood behind me. And that was one of the lessons that I learned, that I've ejected many a Marine out of the Marine Corps.
hmm
And, if it was just for stupid decisions like popping on a piss test or, doing something stupid, no major crimes or anything, and we
Right.
had to accept them, I would talk to them afterwards, say, look, I did what I had to do based on the rules, regulations, and guidelines governing the Uniform Code of Military Justice. I said, but now
hmm
you got a new chapter. Let's talk about your new chapter. This is not
Yeah.
an end all be all. And I would try to help them out. And I still got Marines that I've ejected that reach out to me today,
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
and
And
I went
that's
years. I'm sorry.
that's how it should be. No matter what, you're going to help them. You're going to do whatever. The punishment, sure, fine, whatever. They get kicked out, but still being there, still helping them. That's the way everyone should be.
Yeah, it should be, because at the end of the day, we came in the Marine Corps because we chose a life of service,
hmm Yeah.
and at the end of the day, we still choose that life of service. We want to be of
hmm
service to the community somehow, some way. We don't want
Yeah.
to be forgotten about. We don't want to be dismissed. And
Absolutely.
that's what creates a lot of our issues now, is being dismissed
hmm
and not having anything to serve or anyone to
Right.
serve.
hmm
And you can talk to a lot of these guys now, and that's the big thing. They don't have anything to serve. They don't have anybody to serve.
Yeah. It's like they lose a sense of purpose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And just trying to figure out how to be a civilian again. I lost that. But
Mhm.
fortunately, I'd look at my wife and kids, where the kids wanted to be. And, so, okay, I've got to do something. I've got to make that change.
hmm
And I thought about it, if I'm struggling as a sergeant major with my skill sets, my life experience, my tactical experience, all of that, if I'm struggling, what the hell is happening with these young kids that don't have that?
Oh yeah, for sure.
That's where the suicide rates are. And I've
hmm
lost several of my friends in the senior enlisted ranks and the senior officer ranks to suicides
Yeah.
because they lost their sense of purpose and they couldn't find another one.
Yeah. And it's unfortunate. And, I close out every podcast with talking about veteran suicide. But, given a sense of purpose, I think will help in, pushing those veterans and getting them the help. But you got to have a sense of purpose. If you don't have that, then it's tough.
Yeah. And, one of the things that's given me mine, not only my family, but I did a lot of motorcycle rides as
hmm
an active duty Marine. Actually, Naval Safety Center sent somebody down to interview us because at SOI, we had the first schoolhouse regimental size motorcycle club.
Oh,
But it was
really?
a
Wow.
motorcycle riding club,
Yeah.
not an MC, not a 3-part patch, none of that
Yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But military rank structure did not play into the club,
hmm
because I had kids just coming out of boot camp that had more riding experience than this full bird colonel who's going through a midlife crisis.
Yeah. Wow.
So it's like, look, it's based on riding experience. And we would get together
hmm
and, we would teach MSF riding courses. We would teach riding in adverse conditions. We'd just get together and communicate
That's
and
awesome.
ride and, get together. You'd have company rides because each company's got their own chapter president. And then you've got
hmm
the regimental president, which was me, and just break it
Yeah.
down like that. And now out here, I'm involved with a group called Marine Veterans Motorcycle Association.
Okay.
And that's
I don't think
what
I've
we
heard
do.
of that one. Yeah.
Well, I'm the new state president as of December 1st.
No kidding. Huh. I've never heard of that one. What is it that what is it this one do, or I guess makes it different? I've heard of was it the Leathernecks? Is that what it is?
Yeah,
Leatherneck something?
Leathernecks is a 3-part patch club, and they are a motorcycle club.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of charity things.
hmm
They get together and ride, and they have these massive rides.
hmm
As a smaller group, our rules are kind of different.
Okay.
In the motorcycle community, you got your 3-part patch clubs,
Right.
where you have a prospect period. You got to go so long. You got hang-arounds.
Mm-hmm.
You have to do certain things to earn your 3-part patch. Well, why? My concept. We're a riding club. We just want to get together with like-minded folks, make sure we take care of one another, and then do good things in the communities.
Yeah.
That's our bottom line. So we get together once a month. We meet. We talk about, okay, where are we going to donate money? We've raised some funds, so we set up a specific amount each year that we have to donate, which meets our nonprofit requirements.
Right.
And then we set up another ride. Like our next ride is going to be to raise money for the Young Marines organizations in Tampa and Orlando, so that they can get new uniforms. And if we raise enough, potentially send them off to Hawaii. They've got a trip, an event that they want to do in Hawaii as a Young Marines organization.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Last year we did a flag retirement ceremony for the city of Longwood, and literally taught the city of Longwood how to properly retire flags. We collected over 1,500 national ensigns and had 6 burn barrels going for 12 hours and retired 1,500 flags.
Wow. 1,500.
Yep. And it's just,
Holy
it's
cow,
things like
that's
that give us all a different little sense of purpose.
Yeah.
And it's not, hanging out and drinking beer and, getting involved in the motorcycle club business or any of that. That's not what we're about. Yeah, we know them. They're aware of us. There's no interference there. There's a lot of Marines and all those other motorcycle clubs. I know a lot of the guys that are in the Leathernecks, but ours is family work club.
Yes.
Some of those clubs that are that large, the club always comes first, and you have to do all this stuff for the club. And we don't want to play in that arena.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense. Wow. But
I saw that.
Yeah, my wife just popped in for a show there. So, you've been out now for how long?
I retired in 2012.
In 2012? Okay. So, yeah, that's fun.
And how many years total did you serve?
28.
I don't know why it's going mute on me. All right, say it again.
28 years.
28. Yeah. Okay. Man, that's a good long run. And you had some incredible leaders along the way. That obviously very impactful, not only to you, but many, many Marines.
Oh, absolutely. And the thing that gets me the most is it was years before I got back in touch with any of the Marines that I was in Fallujah with on the last run. We were 6 Marines, had the Colonel's PSD, all of that.
Right.
And, we walled off the city. We were there for the entirety of 2007.
Wow.
At the regimental level.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's a young guy's game. I see that they're posting a reunion or whatever. Well, one of those young Marines got a hold of me, one of the young sergeants. He said, you got to come out.
Yeah.
And it was one of the Marines that got injured pretty badly.
Mm-hmm.
If you look him up on Instagram, he goes by Nub Gunner.
What is it?
Nub Gunner.
Nub Gunner. Okay. I'll have to take a look.
He's got a pinky and a thumb left on his hands. But he's still a tactical 2-gun shooter.
No kidding.
With his pistol grip, he'll pull his pistol grip, and when he comes up on the backside of the grip, he pulls the trigger with his thumb.
Wow.
But he's got his pistol grip. On his rifle, when he comes up into the rifle grip and he's got his forward hand, he pulls the trigger with his pinky. On the other hand.
Wow.
And he can do tactical changes, everything. He's overcome that adversity. He got burned up real bad in an IED explosion. It flipped the Humvee, popped the gunner out one direction. Everybody else was able to get out the doors, but it landed on his door, on the driver's door. He had to go over all that comm equipment to try to get out the turret. And they hit it with an HE.
Oof.
And when he came down, he didn't even realize that he was still on fire when the corpsman waylaid him into the dirt.
No kidding. Wow.
And, he spent a long time them trying to recover it, and then they couldn't do anything with it. And then the recovery. And I would watch him, kind of, I don't know, I guess stalking him, but just seeing, how he was dealing with all of this adversity and telling myself, I've got nothing to complain about. Look at this kid.
Oh, yeah.
you know, and that was, and he's the one that told me, you need to come to the reunion.
Yeah.
You need to be here. We need you here, because that particular rotation, we went through 5 COs in 2 years, 5 company commanders in 2 years for various reasons.
Wow.
And 1 year of that was in a combat zone.
No kidding.
And they said, our stability was you and Gunny Harris. That was it. We didn't care who else rotated in and out. As long as you were there and Gunny Harris was there, we didn't worry about anything. And the first reunion I went to was emotional. That's about all I can say. And I've been to 6 since. Every year we go to Pennsylvania. We spend 4 days wasting a lot of ammo and camping.
Nice. Is that you just doing that on somebody's land out there? Or?
Yeah, one of the Marines has a big family farm out there.
Very nice.
Man, so, I mean, we set up a range, and we've got steel targets. We've got range areas. And, we use a little bit of tannerite here and there.
Oh man. Yeah. Well, I want to say thank you first for coming on and telling your story, man. It's been fantastic. Now, I always, before we end any podcast, I always say, is there anything that you would like to share, words of wisdom, or anything else that you want to talk about? But yeah, go ahead. Floor is yours.
I just, we all need to understand that it's okay to not be okay. It's not okay to not do anything about it.
Right.
Reach out to another Marine. Get engaged in something in your community. I got engaged in the motorcycle club. I'm engaged in, I got my FFL so that I can do weapons transfers and do firearms training.
Right.
Get engaged somewhere into some type of service, because that's what we started out doing, is service. Yeah, we went to combat, but we went to combat for a reason. Serving this country and making sure that we're serving our families the best way we knew how.
Yeah.
And so it's reach out, and if anybody ever has any issues, reach out to me. I have no problem with that. I've taken phone calls from people I've never met before.
Yeah. That's awesome.
So, and we're everywhere. You may not see us, but Marines are everywhere.
Yes.
And the minute you put out a call that I need some help, another Marine's going to step up.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's no brotherhood like it, Yeah.
And, that's the thing that I told this Master Guns that just retired. I said, look, nobody else is coming. It's us. And I will be here to get you through it.
Yeah. Very nice. Well, thank you again for coming on. Thank you for sharing the story. It's been fantastic. I really enjoyed it, the whole thing. So thanks for doing that.
Well, I appreciate the invite. It was kind of unexpected. Like I said, my story is really not that interesting. It's kind of funny, but if I can help somebody else, then that's what it's all about. Yeah,
absolutely. And I tell everybody, everyone's story is important. Whether you served just a couple of years, you served 30 years, doesn't matter. What you did is important, and that story should be told. So if you know anybody else that wants to share a story, like point in my direction, we'll put them on and share that story. So it'd be good.
I got a whole motorcycle club full of Marines.
Very well. Send them all my way. It'll be good. We'll just do the whole club.
Sounds good.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'll go ahead and, go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want to stop the recording.
Oh yeah, let me do the outro real quick. To all the listeners out there, if you're struggling, you need help, anything like that, don't forget the VA does have some great resources. You can always dial 988, press option 1. You can text 838-255, or you can go to veteranscrisisline.net and click on that chat icon. Any of those options will put you in contact with somebody that can help you out. But remember, one veteran life loss is one too many. I care about you. I know this guy cares about you. The whole veteran community cares about you. So please reach out for help. And if you're out there, you're not struggling, reach out and ask your buddies how they're doing. And if they need a helping hand, please give it to them. One last time, thank you. I appreciate it. To all the listeners, stay motivated, change your socks.
San Diego, California, USMC.